Welcome to the Retirement Planning Podcast with certified financial planners Richard W. Paul and Stephen Paul. Listen to a highlight from our recent radio show as we discuss the worlds of finance and retirement. So guys, let's talk about the elements of a retirement plan. You know, there's a lot of different facets and it's really more complex than people realize. Now, I realize we can't go into super detail, but why don't we toss out some of these things, talk about them a little bit, and give some people some enlightenment about really just how complex it can be.
Okay, well, I think what we will do here is we'll just try to hit the kind of a highlighted version of what goes into a retirement plan and what are some of the things that we actually consider.
Okay.
And one of the first things we look at is how long are you likely to live?
Well, I wish I knew that.
Yeah. Don't we all, right? And that's the conundrum here to really creating a retirement plan.
Step one is you come and you sit down with us and you tell us how long you're going to live. We need to know that.
Yeah. Step one.
That's why every plan that we put together, we plan to what? Age 100. We have to. I mean, you could live that long now at this point. It's no longer strange to live into your 90s at this point, so you need to plan to age 100.
Yeah, I was sitting down with a 75 and 77-year-old, and quite surprising, we were talking about, life expectation, longevity, and life expectancy. And the wife's mother had passed away earlier in her 60s because of cancer, but the grandmother lived 107. She broke the bank. And then the husband chimes in, well, my dad's still alive. He's 102. I'm like, 102.
Wow.
So I was just reading about an 85-year-old who's running marathons. Not half marathons, full marathons.
Yeah.
I can barely run a mile.
Well, the oldest guy. Oh, come on.
That article made me feel pretty bad about myself.
Well, there's a guy in his 80s that completed the Ironman down in Hawaii. I mean, the real Ironman. I'm like, seriously? So, hey, life is not over if you don't want it to be, So, all right. Well, number two. Let's kind of move through these here.
Okay, sure.
The impact of inflation. So very important. Just fundamentally, 3% inflation rate, historical inflation rate going back 50 years. If you look out 20 years, you need $7,000 to pay your bills today. You're going to need $14,000.
Exactly. We just talked about average life expectancies going up. I mean, we need to plan for 25, 30 years now in retirement, sometimes even longer. And if you're factoring in 2 to 3% in inflation year after year, increasing your expenses, you wouldn't believe what that number is 25, 30 years down the road.
Yep. So you got to plan for that. Number three, how about strategies for sustaining your income throughout your retirement plan? Oh, that might mean we're talking about a retirement income plan. And so very critical step.
If you're listening and you go, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer to that simple question. How am I going to generate income from my portfolio in retirement? Please come talk to us.
Let me ask you a follow-up. So you say it's a simple question, but for a lot of us, it's not simple, right? That's why we need to get some advice.
Exactly. And that's what we do here. It takes several meetings. We sit down, we go through the whole plan. We design it to tailor fit our client's needs. There's no one-size-fits-all plan here. And if you're sitting with an advisor and he builds something for you after talking to you for 45 minutes, trust me, it is probably not in your best interest. So this is an ongoing process. It's something we have to monitor on a year-to-year basis. And typically when we put a plan together, when all said and done, it's about 5-6 different meetings where we're going over exactly how we're going to generate income for you, how we're going to keep up with inflation, how we're going to plan for loss of income, how we're going to plan for long-term care, how we're going to satisfy all these different needs that you're going to have in retirement. A lot goes into it.
And that brings us to number four, Steve. So well said, is investment considerations when you're in retirement. So creating a retirement plan that really is lining up the different types of investments, because it's a different modality now. And so we're looking at your essential expenses. We're looking at your discretionary expenses. Are you in the accumulation phase, or are you now moving in the preservation distribution phase? In other words, you're retired now. It's more about protecting the money and producing an income. Again, we want to stay ahead of inflation. But short of that, we don't want to take any additional risk on that we don't have to. It's one of the biggest retirement mistakes that we see people make is they're taking on more risk, or they have more risk exposure than is necessary to have a successful retirement plan.
And we're not saying you need to just take the whole portfolio and go from an aggressive accumulation portfolio to a conservative capital preservation portfolio.
Right.
It's just about making sure that you have every angle covered in retirement. And once you're retired, we want to make sure the short-term income is taken care of. Once we know that that piece of the portfolio is protected, that we're generating income on a year-to-year basis, regardless of what the market's doing, beyond that, then we can look at going after some growth. But if that growth piece falls, if the market falls, we want to make sure that we have short-term income protected.
All right, number 5, an annuity in your retirement plan. Is that necessary?
You're dropping the A word there, Rich.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so really think of an annuity. All an annuity is a pension. It's a guaranteed stream of payments. Most people have them. They're called Social Security.
Social Security is basically an annuity, right?
Well, it's an annuity. They're called, if you have a pension, if you have one. Here's the only time I think you really should consider it. If your essential expenses are not covered, your taxes, your health care, your food, all the necessary expenses, sheltering costs, insurances, and whatever, and you're $1,000 short or $1,500 short, you might want to put more guaranteed income into the portfolio to cover that expense. Beyond that, go ahead and invest in the stock market. Know that you're going to have a 10 or 15-year time horizon, but it just is giving you that additional guaranteed income. It's just peace of mind. And it all depends. Everybody's different. You may have a good cushion there with dividend income coming in. It's not necessary. But it can be necessary for some folks out there depending on where they're at.
All right.
Yeah, you just said the A word.
Yeah, that's what I said.
We just lost half of our listeners.
Yeah, or got the interest of half, right? Because it is a very polarizing topic for people.
I think there were $214 billion of annuities sold last year.
Right.
And the thing is, you don't want to be sold a product. You want to talk to an advisor, so you're making sure that what you're getting is the best of the best out there, and it's necessary to have into the portfolio. Everything. Make sure you're dealing with a qualified advisor. Is the name of the deal there.
Everything should be built into a plan. There should be no standalone investment. And there's the argument is, well, there's a lot of bad annuities. Yeah, there's a lot of bad annuities out there. There's a lot of bad stocks. There's a lot of bad mutual funds. There's a lot of bad bonds. There's a lot of bad investments out there.
Real estate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and typically, whenever I design any type of plan, I design one incorporating an annuity and showing my clients what that would look like, and one without. There's no wrong or right way to do this. It's just about making sure whether you go in the annuity direction or whether you go purely managed, that you're doing it in a way where you're protected in the short term, where you have that income protected.
That's well said. Everything has its pluses and minuses, and so you have to know what they are, line it up, and say, hey, is this something that, or do the pluses outweigh the minuses here, and does it enhance my retirement, allow me to sleep more at night? Then it's something you consider. And if not, then you move on. Number 6, how about taxes? How do taxes affect your retirement security? So that's one of the things we're going to look at, because most of the people, I look at the 4 tax bucket, the taxable bucket, tax-deferred bucket, and the tax-free bucket, and finally the estate and income tax-free bucket. Most of the money, Steve, and we know this, sits in that tax-deferred bucket. We want to start getting money out of that tax-deferred bucket over into that tax-free bucket while tax rates are on the lower side. Right now, you can earn up to $100,000 in income, still be in the 12% bracket as a married couple. So to not max out that bracket is a huge mistake.
Yeah, so yes, it's true that you don't have to pull that money out until 70 and a half. But if you're not maxing out that 12% bracket, and you're in retirement right now, pre-70 and a half, you might really want to reconsider your tax planning strategy.
All right, number 7 now. Let's move on to Medicare insurance planning. And we'll call that a health care plan, if you will. If you're 65, you're going to obviously have Medicare, and if you're before 65, you're going to be on your own personal plan. And but just doing the planning necessary to not only get your health care, it's probably going to be the second or third item on your budget worksheet. This is a huge expense. The healthcare cost data report says a couple 65 could spend upwards of around $400,000 between co-pays, deductibles, things that aren't covered, hearing, dental, vision. And so you really got to be aware of what these costs are. So when you're doing your budget worksheet to say, hey, what are my retirement expenses? What are they going to be? Don't overlook this area. And I'll just move us right into number 8 here, Steve. And that's paying for long-term care expenses. And just it's getting educated on first what these expenses are. The average long-term care expense is $92,000 for full-time care, and this is in the country. And so, what is it for the area you're going to retire into? If you go out east, it's going to be much higher. Like even Ann Arbor is $100,000. So it depends on what area. I think it's 110, in fact. But so you got to know what your costs are, specific to the area that you're living in, and how you're going to pay for those costs.
And don't forget to factor in inflation there. I mean, inflation is north of 4 when it comes to long-term care expenses. So you talk about it being around $100,000 a year right now. By the time you get there, if you're 60, 65 years old, 25, 30 years from now, it could be closer to $250,000 a year.
Whew.
Yeah, actually,
even higher.
Yeah, if you go out, if you use the Medicare inflation rate currently, I believe that number gets up to about 170,000, and if you take the average time, 2.5 to 3 years stay, times that number, we're talking about a $500,000 expense. Now, just think if it's cognitive or Alzheimer's, something along that line, dementia, that could get pushed out to 5 or 6 years in a heartbeat. Now you're talking about as much as $1 million outlay, and you just need to be aware what the costs are. Maybe you want to self-insure, maybe you want to transfer the risk, and if you do, there's 2 or 3 or 4 different options you need to look at to say, hey, I don't want to own this risk. I'd like to transfer at least some of it. And then with a good qualified advisor, sit down and talk through those options. And if you like to self-insure, great. But if not, you'll at least have a way of offsetting some of those costs by transferring that risk away to an insurance company. So that brings us to number 9. That brings us to the use of life insurance in retirement planning. So when might you need life insurance? Well, one of the reasons might be is what we had just talked about, long-term care. Couple 65, they take out a joint policy for $500,000, and these are rough numbers because they don't want to give money to an insurance company for long-term care insurance, which is expensive, and they have the prices or the premiums have a tendency to go up. You'd be eligible with a long-term care rider to get 2% of that face amount of the $500,000, which is $10,000 a month for 48 months. So now you can spend your own death benefit while you're alive for long-term care costs, protecting what? Your other money, the money that's going to go to your kids. Now, you never have a long-term care event. You spend $10,000 a year for 25 years into this life insurance policy. That's $250,000. You quietly pass away in your sleep at 90. Now a $500,000 check goes to your kids, income tax free. So not only do you recover your $250,000 that you put in, but you get an additional $250,000 in death benefit. And so that would be one reason. The other one might be just leveraging your estate where you have to take these required minimum distributions out. You don't really need the money. We just had a case like this not too long ago. And so we took the required minimum, roughly $50,000. We put it into last to die life insurance policy, and I believe the death benefit was a little over $3 million. And guess what their net worth was? $3 million. So what did we just do? We just doubled their net worth that goes to their kids, with half of it being income tax free.
Life insurance can be very valuable when it comes to retirement planning. I, in my own personal portfolio, have an index universal life policy, and I use it for 3 reasons. Tax-free income down the road. I'm going to take loans from the policy. Loans are not titled as any type of ordinary income. They're not going to be taxed to me to pair with my pre-tax income. I look at the terminal illness rider, accelerated death benefit for long-term care purposes to protect myself and my spouse. Then I look at wealth transfer. If this is money that I never touch, I don't want it going to an insurance company or the government. I want it going to my family, leaving them in a better position. So it can be a very valuable tool to use in a portfolio.
Yep, no question. And the last one, very quickly, is just your different housing options. We had a client that downsized from a 4,700 square foot home, paying $12,000 a year in taxes, $600 a month in utilities. That went down to $3,000 in taxes, $250 for utilities, and she now is enjoying cleaning her house again. So she's saving $150 on a housekeeper, and then less cost on insurance as well. So the total cost is going to be somewhere around $15,700 a year. They're going to be saving. That's a nice vacation every year. The other thing too is that you might want to use your home, depending on your age, and as a potential annuity, because you can do a reverse mortgage. If you're in that situation where you're trying to maximize income, that can be a conversation in terms of what that could look like for you in giving you additional income.
Well, this has been the Retirement Planning Podcast with certified financial planners Richard W. Paul and Steve Paul of R.W. Paul and Associates. Make sure that you reach out to them at 248-305-9911. That's 248-305-9911. This has been the Retirement Planning Podcast.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only and shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or investment advisory services to residents of any state other than Michigan. Topics should be discussed with your individual advisor prior to implementation. Investment advisory services offered through Richard W. Paul and Associates, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Midwest Financial Consultants, Inc.